Not all deaths happen the way we expect. Sometimes the end comes in the strangest, most unexplainable ways. In this video, we'll uncover 5 more real stories of people whose deaths were so unusual they defy logic. These are tales of bizarre accidents and eerie endings that leave more questions than answers. It was May 19, 2017, in Gwai, Zimbabwe. Thunis Botha, a 51-year-old South African hunting guide, was leading a group near Hwanga National Park. With nearly 30 years of experience, Botha was well known in the hunting world. He had founded Thunis Botha Big Game Safaris, a company specializing in hunting expeditions for lions, leopards, and elephants. That afternoon, Botha and his group were trekking through the wilderness when they came across a herd of breeding elephants. As they got closer, 3 elephants suddenly charged toward them. Botha, an experienced hunter, fired his rifle, attempting to protect himself and his team. But the gunfire only seemed to escalate the situation. As the group focused on the charging elephants, a 4th one approached from the side. It caught them off guard and quickly lifted Botha off the ground with its trunk. Before anyone could intervene, another hunter fired a shot, striking the elephant. Fatally wounded, the massive animal collapsed and landed directly on Botha. The weight of the elephant was too much. He was crushed instantly, and there was nothing anyone could do to save him. His hunting companions stood in shock. The man who had spent decades tracking and hunting Africa's biggest animals had just lost his life in a tragic turn of events. The incident happened near Hwanga National Park, the same area where 2 years earlier, the famous lion Cecil had been killed. At the time of his passing, Botha was on a legal 10-day hunting trip. Though he had spent his life guiding others on these expeditions, this time, he didn't make it back. Botha had started his career in the 1980s to help pay for college. Over the years, his small hunting trips turned into a full-time business. His company, Gamehound Safaris, became well known for its hunting tours in Zimbabwe, Botswana, and South Africa. He specialized in a method called monteria hunting, a European technique that used trained dogs to drive big game toward hunters. Traditionally used for smaller animals, Botha adapted this technique for much larger ones, making it a key part of his safaris. His reputation extended beyond Africa. He frequently traveled to the United States to attract wealthy clients looking for big game hunting experiences. Many saw him as one of the best in the business, and his safaris were in high demand. Over time, he expanded his operations, establishing more hunting ranches across southern Africa. After news of his death spread, the reactions were mixed. The hunting community mourned his loss, remembering him as a skilled and respected figure. Friends, clients, and fellow hunters took to social media to express their condolences. "A legend has fallen," one person wrote. Another added, "So sad, R.I.P." His wife, Karike, and their 5 children were devastated. Karike prepared to travel to Zimbabwe to bring his body home, facing a heartbreaking reality. However, not everyone saw his passing as a tragedy. Critics, especially those against trophy hunting, expressed different views. Many believed his fate was the result of the very thing he had dedicated his life to. Some people online voiced their frustration, saying that sympathy should be reserved for the elephant rather than the hunter. Others used the moment to call for an end to trophy hunting altogether. Adding to the hunting community's grief, Botha's death came just weeks after another tragic incident. His close friend, Scott Van Zyl, had been on a hunting trip in Zimbabwe when he went missing. Days later, authorities discovered that he had been attacked by crocodiles. His remains were found in one of the animals. Botha and Van Zyl had worked together for years, and losing both men so close together was a heavy blow to their colleagues and families. Despite Botha's passing, Gamehound Safaris continued to operate. His death was a grim reminder of the risks involved in hunting. Though the industry remained profitable, the dangers were always present, whether from unpredictable wildlife or the challenging environments in which these hunts took place. Could the incident have been prevented? What if the group had not encountered the elephants that day? What if the other hunter had reacted just a second earlier? These are the kinds of questions that will never have clear answers. The loss of Thunis Botha marked the end of a significant chapter in big game hunting. Some remembered him as a skilled professional who had mastered his craft. Others saw his passing as a consequence of a dangerous and controversial industry. Regardless of opinion, his story remains one of risk, unpredictability, and the reality of facing the wild. It was October 2012 in Montreal, Canada. Miriam Ducre-Lemay, a 20-year-old woman, had just started a new relationship. She was excited about her boyfriend and had even told her mother, Micheline, that she was in love. It was the happiest she had ever seen her daughter. But that happiness was short-lived. That night, Miriam and her boyfriend attended a party before heading back to his home. Later, he made himself a peanut butter sandwich. At the time, he had no idea that Miriam had a severe peanut allergy. She had never mentioned it. After eating, he brushed his teeth, and they shared a goodnight kiss. That simple moment had devastating consequences. Almost immediately, Miriam started feeling unwell. She struggled to breathe and panicked as she realized what was happening. She asked her boyfriend if he had eaten peanuts, and when he confirmed, she knew she was having an allergic reaction. She quickly told him to call 911. Unfortunately, Miriam did not have her epinephrine auto-injector or EpiPen with her that night. She tried using her asthma inhaler, but it wasn't enough. Her throat swelled, making it harder to breathe, and her body went into shock. Paramedics arrived within 8 minutes and rushed her to the hospital. But by then, the lack of oxygen had caused severe brain damage. Despite doctors' efforts, there was nothing they could do. Miriam passed away that night, just hours after what seemed like an innocent kiss. A coroner's report released in 2014 confirmed that she had suffered a fatal allergic reaction caused by peanut proteins in her boyfriend's saliva. Because she hadn't told him about her allergy and wasn't wearing a medical alert bracelet, he had no way of knowing the danger. If she had carried her EpiPen, the outcome might have been different. Her mother, Micheline, was heartbroken. She later shared that Miriam usually carried her EpiPen, but for some reason she didn't have it that night. She decided to speak publicly about her daughter's story to raise awareness. She wanted others with severe allergies to always carry their medication and to make sure people around them knew about their condition. Dr. Christine McCusker, a pediatric allergy specialist at Montreal Children's Hospital, explained that peanut allergens can remain in a person's saliva for hours. She emphasized that allergic reactions can escalate quickly, and carrying an EpiPen at all times is crucial. This is why you have to carry your EpiPen, even if you don't want to, Dr. McCusker said. The most important thing is to let people know about your allergies and how they can help in an emergency. Sadly, Miriam's case was not the only one. In 2005, a similar incident occurred when 15-year-old Christina Deforges from Quebec died after kissing a boy who had eaten peanuts. However, in her case, the official cause of death was later determined to be a severe asthma attack, though allergens were found in her system. These incidents led researchers to study how long peanut proteins remain active in saliva. Miriam's death highlighted the real dangers of severe food allergies. Even a small trace of an allergen can cause a life-threatening reaction within minutes. Symptoms can quickly progress from mild discomfort to a complete inability to breathe. Without immediate medical intervention, survival becomes unlikely. Her mother continues to share her story in hopes of preventing similar tragedies. She urges young people with food allergies to always be prepared and to speak up about their condition. Miriam's story leaves an unsettling question. Would things have turned out differently if she had told her boyfriend about her allergy? If she had carried her EpiPen that night? No one can say for sure, but one thing is clear. Being informed and prepared can save lives. It was October 31st, 2021 in Brasilândia de Minas, a small town in Brazil's Minas Gerais state. A 30-year-old man and 2 friends set out for a peaceful fishing trip at a quiet lake on a farm. They expected a relaxing day in nature, unaware that it would end in tragedy. As they enjoyed their time on the water, their boat struck a submerged log, disturbing a nearby beehive. Suddenly, a swarm of aggressive bees surrounded them. In a panic, all 3 men jumped into the lake, hoping to escape the relentless insects. 2 of them managed to swim to safety, but the 3rd man was not as fortunate. The lake, unknown to them, was home to piranhas. Though attacks on humans are rare, these sharp-toothed fish can be dangerous under the right conditions. The presence of piranhas in this lake was unusual, leading authorities to suspect they had been introduced unnaturally, possibly by someone dumping them after removing them from an aquarium. As the two men reached the shore, their friend struggled in the water. The splashing may have drawn the piranhas toward him, and they quickly attacked. His body was later found about 4 meters from the shore. When firefighters recovered his remains, they discovered severe injuries, particularly to his face. It was clear the piranhas had inflicted significant damage. Authorities were uncertain whether he had drowned first or if the injuries prevented him from reaching safety. His body's position resembled that of drowning victims, suggesting he may have lost consciousness before the fish attacked. However, the extent of the injuries left room for speculation. One of the rescuers described the victim's condition as unrecognizable, with multiple areas of his body severely affected. The fire department confirmed the lake did, in fact, contain piranhas, which had contributed to the horrific nature of the accident. After investigating, authorities ruled out foul play. His death was seen as an unfortunate accident caused by a series of unpredictable events, starting with the bee attack, followed by his decision to jump into the lake, and ultimately, the presence of the piranhas. With no signs of intentional harm, his body was released to his family for funeral arrangements. His 2 surviving friends, understandably shaken, recounted the terrifying moments. One of them, who was allergic to bee stings, had attempted to help but was forced to prioritize his own safety. Both men were taken to a hospital for treatment, though their physical injuries were not severe compared to what their friend endured. The lake, once a quiet fishing spot, was now linked to an unsettling tragedy. The discovery that piranhas were not native to the area made their presence even more concerning. Experts noted that while attacks on humans are uncommon, they can happen under certain conditions, particularly if the fish feel threatened or if a person is struggling in the water. The incident raised questions about how the piranhas ended up in the lake and whether they posed a continuing risk. Investigators suspected they had been introduced either accidentally or deliberately, but there was no clear answer. Had the bees not attacked, or had the lake been free of piranhas, the man might have survived. A simple fishing trip turned deadly due to an unpredictable chain of events. His story is a sobering reminder of how nature, even in the most unexpected places, can turn dangerous in an instant. The lake in Brasilandia de Minas will likely never be seen the same way again. It was May 29, 2015 at Honokohau Harbor on Hawaii's Big Island. Randy Lanes, a 47-year-old fishing boat captain and owner of Sundowner sport fishing charters, was preparing for another day on the water. With over 25 years of experience, he had encountered some of the ocean's most powerful creatures, from massive marlins to fierce swordfish. But on this day, something unexpected happened, one that cost him his life. The morning started like any other. Lanes was on his boat, scanning the waters for his next catch, when he noticed something unusual, a nearly 6-foot-long broadbill swordfish swimming in the shallow harbor. Swordfish typically stay in the deep ocean, so seeing one so close to shore was rare. It was an opportunity Lanes couldn't ignore. With his spear gun in hand, he carefully aimed and fired, hitting the fish. But it didn't go down easily. The injured swordfish thrashed violently, struggling against the spear. Determined to secure his catch, Lanes jumped into the water. However, things quickly took a dangerous turn. The spear line had become tangled in a mooring anchor. In an unexpected move, the swordfish turned and swam straight toward him, its long, sharp bill pointing directly at his chest. Before he could react, the fish struck him with full force, piercing his upper right torso. The impact was severe, and Lanes was left floating in the water, unresponsive. Bystanders watched in shock as fellow fishermen rushed to pull him out. Emergency responders arrived quickly and attempted CPR, but his injuries were too severe. Lanes was taken to Kona Hospital, where he was pronounced dead shortly after. Swordfish are known for their speed and strength, making them dangerous when threatened. Their sharp, elongated bills can cause serious harm, and they have even been known to attack boats and people in rare cases. The one that struck Lanes had a bill about 3 feet long and weighed around 40 pounds. Small compared to other swordfish, but still powerful enough to cause fatal injuries. While the attack wasn't intentional, it showed how unpredictable and dangerous marine life can be. Fishermen understand the risks of their work, but even the most experienced can find themselves in life-threatening situations. Randy Lanes was a well-loved figure in Hawaii's fishing community. His family described him as a tough man with a kind heart. He had a generous spirit, often helping others even when he had little himself. His cousin, Bomboy Lanes, recalled how Randy never hesitated to invite strangers to a barbecue or lend a hand to someone in need. After his passing, friends and family gathered at the harbor to honor him. They brought traditional leis and swam out to the spot where he had lost his life. The fishing community, deeply shaken by the tragedy, came together to remember the man who had been a mentor, friend, and local legend. Through his business, Sundowner Sport Fishing Charters, Lanes introduced countless people to the excitement of deep-sea fishing. He shared his love for the ocean with others, giving them unforgettable experiences on the water. His absence left a void in the community, but his memory lived on in the stories of those who knew him. The circumstances surrounding Lanes's death raised questions. Was the swordfish's reaction purely instinct, or was it just a chaotic struggle? If the fish hadn't been in the harbor that day, or if Lanes had waited a few moments longer before diving in, would the outcome have been different? These are questions that will never have definite answers. What remains certain is that Randy Lanes was a man deeply connected to the ocean, a place he loved and respected. His passing was a tragic accident, a reminder of the risks that come with working in nature. Though he is gone, his legacy continues through the people he touched and the community that still remembers him. It was October 26, 2001, in Fort Worth, Texas. Shantae Jawan Mallard, a 25-year-old nursing assistant, was driving her Chevrolet Cavalier under the influence. That night, she hit 37-year-old Gregory Glenn Biggs, a homeless man walking along the highway. The impact sent him crashing into her windshield, leaving him trapped with his legs hanging over the hood. Instead of stopping to help, Mallard kept driving. She went home, parked her car in the garage, and left Biggs there, still alive but severely injured. As a trained nursing assistant, she knew he needed medical attention, yet she chose to do nothing. For the next 2 to 3 days, Biggs remained trapped in the windshield. He was conscious, bleeding heavily, and in extreme pain. He begged for help, but Mallard ignored his pleas. Eventually, he succumbed to his injuries, dying from blood loss and shock, an outcome that medical experts later confirmed could have been prevented with prompt treatment. Realizing Biggs had passed away, Mallard reached out to her friend, Cleet Jackson. Along with Jackson's cousin, Herbert Tyrone Cleveland, they devised a plan to dispose of the body. They moved Biggs's remains to a park and abandoned him there. To cover up the crime, they even attempted to destroy evidence by setting fire to parts of Mallard's car. Months later, Mallard's reckless actions caught up with her. She was at a party when she casually mentioned the incident, even laughing about it. A witness, disturbed by her lack of remorse, reported her to authorities. This led to an investigation and eventually her arrest. The trial revealed disturbing details. Prosecutors emphasized that Biggs had suffered for days after the crash and could have been saved had Mallard sought help. The medical examiner testified that he had no internal injuries. His death was solely due to untreated blood loss. Fire department personnel later confirmed that if they had been called, they could have saved him. During the trial, Mallard's defense argued that she had acted out of panic and fear, not cruelty. They maintained that she never intended to harm Biggs, and that her inaction was due to shock rather than malice. However, the prosecution countered that her decision to ignore a suffering man, despite having medical training, was inexcusable. Forensic evidence further proved Biggs had remained alive for a significant period after the crash. Bloodstains inside the car indicated that he had been moving and coughing up blood. His injuries were survivable, making Mallard's failure to act even more damning. Her accomplices, Jackson and Cleveland, both pleaded guilty to tampering with evidence. Jackson received a 10-year prison sentence, while Cleveland was sentenced to 9 years. Both had played a role in covering up the crime rather than seeking help. One of the most emotional moments of the trial came when Gregory Biggs's son, Brandon, took the stand. He spoke about his father, a man who had struggled with mental health issues but was working to turn his life around. He shared memories of visiting his father at a shelter, hoping to support him. Despite his grief, Brandon extended forgiveness to Mallard, expressing hope that she would reflect on her actions. Mallard's defense portrayed her as someone who had made a terrible mistake, not a heartless person. They argued that she acted out of fear rather than cruelty, but the jury wasn't convinced. As a nursing assistant, she knew how to help Biggs, yet she did nothing. In the end, Mallard was found guilty. She was sentenced to 50 years in prison, plus an additional 10 years for tampering with evidence. These sentences would run concurrently, and she would be eligible for parole in 2027. As of today, she remains behind bars. This case raises difficult questions. How could someone trained to help others choose to ignore a person in desperate need? What led Mallard to let Biggs suffer instead of making one call for help? And what if those around her had spoken up sooner? Could they have prevented this tragedy? Gregory Biggs lost his life not just because of a reckless accident, but because of a decision to do nothing. This story is a haunting reminder of the consequences of inaction and the devastating impact of choosing self-preservation over basic humanity.